Hi, thank you for joining me. Today's project, we're going to do a koi fish. And what you'll need is of course, the canvas from your kit. You'll need the 2 brushes, a small amount of water, and you'll need your palette with some paints laid out. Very small amount of yellow is needed for this project. You'll need your orange, your blue, your green, and your white. We will begin by putting the background color on your canvas. You want to make sure you wet your brush, dip it in your blue. You're going to apply it across the top of the painting. Add some more water. You're going to create a watercolor wash on this painting. You can go up and down with it with your brush strokes. Will be fine as long as you finish with a horizontal brush stroke. You can, to this blue, add a tinge of green to just change the color of the blue. Then add the blue paint down on the very bottom, adding some water, and bring that upward towards the middle. Again, you can add a small amount of green in there. It just creates a color harmony for the painting, as well as creating a little more interest. It's a lot of water on this, and that is because it is the background. Also because you don't want it as vibrant as the painting of the fish itself, which is the focal point of the painting. And you want it to be transparent enough so that you can still see your subject matter through there. Bring the top color down and the bottom color up to meet in the middle, and to that middle add a little white. More water. Make sure the blue mixes with it. The whole background will be blue, but behind the fish itself will be a little white. It'll be a little lighter, should I say. I'm not taking out the brush marks. I want the brush marks to stay. They will create interest. However, I want all the brush marks to go horizontally. So where I put vertical brush marks here and there, I want to just brush them side to side to make it a horizontal look. That's that. Now you can clean your brush off in water. And set that brush aside. You're going to pick up your small brush. The painting is a little wet right now, so you can fan it with something or just wave it a little bit and it will dry some for you. It doesn't have to be totally dry because you want it to blend and do some of the work for you so that you don't have to do so much of the work yourself. I want it somewhat dry so that I'm not creating the muddy grade effect, it's called. Adding your complementary colors together will give you a brown, and we'll use that later, so I don't want to use it all over the painting. That's pretty good there. So taking the small brush, dip it in the green, and now I'm going to do the seaweed plant life, just squiggle going up. You can put a generous amount of green on there, green paint on there, and go up with it. And do that to all 4. You can go like in the very middle of it if you like. That will be fine. Make sure it comes all the way down to the bottom of the painting. And now to it, you can add some blue. If you feel that you are a little heavy-handed, come all the way to the tip of the brush. That's where you want to hold it, like so. That way it gives you less control over the brush. You'll end up with a looser paint brush marks. So now I'm going to take the blue and I'm going to just go along this plant life here and there, not the whole thing, just in spots with the blue. So the plant life itself is green, and I'm adding interest to it by putting squiggle marks of blue on it. I want you to be able to see that. I firmly believe when painting, I should be able to see every color that you use. So now I'm going to wash that brush off and dry it off on my paper towel. That's because it had some green on it and I don't want the green on this part. Dip it into the blue and get a generous amount of blue paint on there, holding it still at the very end. I'm going to outline the bottom of the fish. Just go right along the bottom of the fish. And if you put enough on there, a generous amount on there, it will be able to go all the way along the bottom of the fish. Perfect. And wash that off. We're now going to switch brushes. Get the larger brush again. Now what I want to show you will be the paintbrush marking. We are going to allow the paint to work for us, which means we don't want to overwork ourselves and we don't want to get stressed out. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to put paint on my brush and I want to show you the paintbrush stroke that we're going to use now. Instead of going straight up and down like that, that will give your painting a flat look. We're going to follow the body shape of the fish itself, and it is curved. It is also 3D. So in order to imitate that, we're going to use a sickle or a slight C shape, which means I'm going to hold my brush straight up and down so that I'm using the full width of the brush, and I'm going to go around the body of the fish. And that's what you tell yourself, go around the body of the fish. And it will make the body of the fish pop off the page. This is the look that we want here and not this flat look. Okay? So now I'm going to load up my brush again with orange paint. And I'm going to take this paintbrush and trace the blue right on top of it. And it's going to create some weird color, which will be fine. Now I'm going to load my paintbrush up, and now I'm going to do that C shape going up around the body of the fish. Up around the body of the fish, touching this line of madness that I made. Up around the body of the fish. Notice I went right over some of the spaces that have the white markings. That will be fine. We'll do that later. And of course, as you see in here, I did leave some gaps in there, which is okay. So this marking that I made coming up from the bottom of the fish has the blue mixed in it. I want to now wipe all of that off, wash my brush in water, and dry that off. Now I want to come back with just orange, just plain orange, no blue mixed in, and I'm going to go in between these markings that I made and right over the top of some of them. Perfect. Now I'm going to come back with some white, scoop up a generous amount of white on that brush, and I'm going to come down from the top of the fish, making those same C-shape markings. So I'm going to take that white and I'm going to trace the top of the fish all the way over. And now I'm going to go from there down around the body of the fish. Around the body of the fish. So what that did was it's giving me light up top and dark on the bottom. I'm going to wipe that off and not dip it in water, just wipe it off. And now I'm going to come back. I have gaps in between the white. I'm going to come back now. I can take some white and fill that in. It's going to pick up the orange, which is fine. And just keep going around the body of the fish. And it's okay if some of my strokes dip down into this darker color. That's okay. I'm going to wipe that off my brush, and then I'm going to come back with some orange and come up. Going around the body of the fish again, just coming up. Around the body of the fish, coming up. I want you to be able to see it so it looks darker as it goes down around the body. Now this one has a lot of blue on the outline. I don't want a whole lot of blue, but I don't want that blue to totally disappear. So I'm going to take a little orange and trace it again. I got a little heavy-handed with it. That's okay. And then come up. Or going around the body of the fish still. Taking my small brush, wash that brush off and set it aside. Taking your small brush now, we're going to dip it into the orange, and we're going to do the fins on the fish. So I have a little front whisker here, fin on that side, fin on that side, and then here. The fins on this side, I want to make sure I'm doing 2 markings, because these fins are closer to me, so they're going to be larger than the fins on this side. And now I want to go up and do the fins of the tail. So the lines that are on there, I want to trace those lines with the orange paint, holding the brush at the very end. And it's okay to be heavy-handed with it though. Just make sure you lay down your paint. And get those markings in there like so. Now while you still have orange paint on your brush, I want you to dip into the blue. And you're going to come to the side, that orange and blue, and mix it right here on the side. I'm taking a little more orange. That's going to create the brown. If it doesn't look like it's a dark brown, then just add a touch more blue to it. Alright, I got a generous amount on there. And I'm going to do the mouth of the fish coming up to the coin. You have 2 coins in its mouth. I'm coming right up to the coins. Now I'm going to do the eye. The far side has a little mark. You only see part of it. You don't see the whole eye. It's on the other side of the head. On this side, I'm going to make a larger circle, and that's his eye. And while that's drying, we're going to clean off our brush. And we're going to go into the white paint now. Go into your white paint with the small brush and paint the 2 coins in front. It's in his mouth. So paint those coins. The yellow is a very translucent color, so we need to paint the white on there first so that it will show up. Take the white and put it into the fins that are on this side. The 2 here on this side, to give them a little depth so they're not flat. And now between these orange markings for the tail, you're going to add the white. It is going to blend with the orange. Make sure you add a generous amount of white. And it will blend with the orange, but that will be okay. Just continue to add it in. You're not covering up the orange, you're just adding it to it. And if you want to get a little fancy, which some people get a little fancy and they may make the tail a little bit larger than what it is, that's perfectly okay. I'm going to clean that off because that's the white, and I think I have enough white in there. I'm going to come back with some orange and make my markings here. I don't want the orange to totally disappear. I want you to be able to see it. And I had it quite blended in, so you can always add a little more here and there. Making sure that your tail fin is attached to the body of the fish. Mine seemed a little disjointed just then, so that's why you saw me add that there, just to make sure. Now I'm not cleaning the brush, but I'm going straight into the brown that I had there, and I'm going to do an outline on the Cohen, because you tend to lose those coins when you do that. Also, we have that there. We're going to do the coins completely first, so you can wash that brush off. And you're going to go into the yellow and color in the coins. So the white paint that you put down may still be wet. So just make sure you have a generous amount of yellow on there, and if you need to, you can just sort of tap it in, which it will add a little texture to it, and that's fine as long as it makes it looks like the coins are up off of the canvas. And you can wash your brush off in water and dry it. Come into that brown that you have. You only need a very small amount of it. And now you're going to come over the top of the koi fish mouth and go over the coins to push those coins into his mouth, like so. Wash your brush off, and I'm going to add, it's going to blend in with it, with the orange, but that is fine. That way it looks like the coins are actually in the mouth of the fish. And wash off your brush, drying it off. Come into your white paint and put a very small dot on that far eyeball. It has to be small because it's in the distance. And then on this eyeball you can put a larger dot of paint. That shows the light hitting it. Now, if you like, you can have that dot like that, or you can make it a half moon shape in here. It doesn't have to be perfect, just enough so that you can see the difference in the shape. I'm going to add a little more of that brown on here. We're just adding details to it now. Finishing it up, you can add some more brown and greens here, going horizontally, because you want it to look in small horizontal dashes so it looks like it's in the distance. The one thing I will say we will do is take a generous amount of green on your small brush, and if this tail is dry in here, you're going to bring the seaweed up over the front of that tail, and in doing so you will push the tail of the fish in the background. So I'm going to start here and come up over, following the squiggles. Then I'll add a touch more blue here and there. And if you need to add more greens here and there on these other ones, you can. And that way, those are just your details. Okay, go side to side, horizontally, in small dashes with the blue and with the green. And then come over it again with some water, because you want it watered down. You don't want it as obvious as the foreground. What may help is once you put the dashes down with the small brush, come back with your larger brush, wetting it, and then come back over that, making horizontal strokes, short horizontal dashes. Side to side, small, watered down, not very obvious. And it will push them in the background to show movement here and there in the water. I'm going to use the small brush, dry it off. If it's wet, dry it off. And now I'm going to add my white markings here and there on the fish. We had one here. Add generous amounts of white, and sometimes I just tap it. It adds to the interest on the shape. Also, it allows the bottom colors to show through, because on the real fish they sort of look like they're blended anyway. You see patches of the other colors of the fish showing inside of the white markings. And once that dries, if you feel you want to add a little more, you can. But as I tap this, I put a lot of color, a lot of paint on there. As I tap this, some of the underlying color comes off, and that makes a perfect blend of colors. You can add a little yellow into those if you like, here and there. Not much, just a little. It's such a small amount, it's not readily noticeable, but your eyes will pick it up. And if you want to add just a tap of blue in that, you can. Making sure it doesn't touch where the yellow is. Really small amounts in there. Very small amounts. You don't want it to touch where the yellow is because you don't want it to turn green. That one was a little too blue. There. And there you have it. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.